The next thing I'm going to do before I attach the backs is I'm going to put rails going from the front to the back of this piece. I'll be able to screw them into my 3 vertical cross members, and those are going to be wooden rails. I kind of was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to use metal slides or wooden rails on this. Wooden rails are great, but sometimes over the years with drawers they kind of wear down and the drawer might open cockeyed. But on smaller drawers like this, they work great. So I'm going to make 4 of those and attach them, and then I'm going to attach the back. To make my wooden rails, I just used some scrap wood I had lying around. These are actually from an old dresser. I believe they're poplar. I cut them to 1 inch wide and they were 3/4 inch thick. And then I just cut out a 3/4 inch L, 3/4 by 1/4 inch, and I'm left with that. And then this is what your drawer bottom will slide on. So I put these on their sides to make it a little easier to mount them. So they're going to go in there basically like that, and I'm going to glue them at these 3 points, and once again put a few brads in there. And then tomorrow, once the glue has set up, I'll probably go back in and put some thin screws or hardware through the 3 spots as well, just to really sturdy it up. On the front, what you're looking for is to make sure that this lip of your wooden slide does not go past the edge of your face frame, because if it does, your drawer will constantly catch on it when it's pulled out. I'm going to be making the drawers that are going to go in here, and the basic construction for that is I'm going to make a carcass, and then that carcass will be faced with a nicer piece of lumber, and these are going to be inset, so that front piece will fit inside the frame of this. So by the time this video comes out, I will have posted a how-to video on drawers. It's going to be a general video using a dovetail jig to make the drawers. That's going to be my primary construction for these. Even on these smaller drawers, it might be a little bit of overkill to be using thicker lumbers with dovetails, because you're not going to have a ton of weight in here. But I just kind of like to use the dovetails, and even on thicker lumber, you'll know it will never come apart. So I'm not going to film a detailed explanation of that, because like I said, I'm going to have a video showing you how to use this and make drawers, and I'll just reference that from now on in videos instead of detailing how to make drawers, because that in and of itself is almost a half-an-hour video. So I'll probably just film the process to put it in this video, but if you want to know how to do it, you can check out the other one, and I'll put a link in the description from now on with that video. The drawer's drying, and the last big thing I have to fabricate for this is going to be the drawer fronts. The customer on this wanted the look of like a white panel door. Some of the wood that faces the clean side, not the rough side, so the clean side on this side, some of the cherry is going to get a dye, a color dye on it to kind of match some existing pieces in their house, but she also wanted to bring some whites into the piece. So I'm going to be using parts of an old panel door. Now I thought I had doors, a panel that would have fit in here almost perfectly. They make doors with tinier panels up top and longer panels on bottom, but I actually don't. Sometimes if you find these 5-panel doors, the 5th panel will be a middle panel, and that makes these ones, this is actually upside down, it would make these ones on bottom this size, but then these ones on top a little bit smaller. I don't have that. This is the best I had. So luckily with this door, this side, this panel's cracked, and the molding's a little compromised. So the width is good. I have the 12 inches I need by using some of this for either side. So I think what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to cut that top section off on my table saw, then cut this one down to width, and then with the remaining moldings on this side, make a center partition for those 2 doors. Hopefully that will kind of get me where I need to be. If you don't want to use older materials, this is kind of the long way of doing it, but I want that look, the customer wants that look for the piece, so this is kind of what I'm stuck dealing with. But if you just want to make regular doors or even panel doors out of older materials, I'm going to put a link to the description of my video. I've made a couple videos showing how I make certain style doors, and you can kind of play around with that. So in order to get the rough widths I want on the side, I measured out equidistance from this edge so that these two, what's going to become my stiles, are the same width. Now in order to cut this door on my table saw, you might have noticed I trimmed off one side to get a flat edge, flipped it and trimmed it down to the line I had here, then flipped it again and trimmed it down to the line I had over here. I did that just because these old doors aren't perfectly square, and cutting it that 3 times like that will give you a better edge than not. So then I went and found middle of my panel. I wanted middle of my panel, not what's left of the door. I'm going to slice this down to size, then I'm going to start trimming off the moldings I need from this door, cut those and attach them to this panel. I'll probably have to go through and cut this raised panel so it slides into my groove. And once that's done, then I'll trim it down to my rough size. And since these are inset doors, I can kind of prop them right in front, take off the back, and trim this piece I want. Since, like I said, these doors probably aren't going to be perfectly square, so it'll be hard to get them inset going off just my panel. Even though I was able to take that other panel apart, it was really busted. You could see part of the panel still stuck in here. At some point they wood puttied it in place, which created an absolute mess. And the panel was completely busted. At one point they must have accidentally broke it out from the other side, so all the moldings on the inside of the door are completely ripped off. So I don't know how much of this is going to be reusable. I might be able to use this to make new parts. So after that, what I did was I took my panels and broke them apart as well to get the raised panel out, because you're going to have to cut this. So the easiest way to do that is to get the panel out. And this might look like it was a lot of work, but a lot of these older doors, these parts aren't glued into place, and if they are glued into place, they the glue has deteriorated over time. So usually this is some sort of tongue and groove joint, or even some dowels and stuff, but if you cut the dowels off, these parts pop right out. So I just removed the paint on the inside, which I believe these doors are supposed to be distressed looking at the end of the day, so I would have had to do that anyway, and I was able to pop those off. I've been working on this door. The way I'm cutting these down to size is quite similar to how you would make a sash door. And the difference between these and cabinet doors are there's molding on either side, which means the wood's usually thicker and the insert panel's usually a little thicker than cabinet doors. This might seem like a lot of work, but it's definitely faster and much cheaper than making small sash doors from scratch. Obviously, the easiest way to go about it would be to make just cabinet style doors, but they won't have the same look as these, which I think will match the piece better, and the customer wanted it. So I've been kind of rushing through this. I haven't been filming the whole thing mainly because most of you, if you're making something like this, will not be tackling this sort of endeavor. If you are interested in learning how to make these sort of paneled doors, the ones I made were actually glass panels, light panels, but doors are quite similar. You could check out those videos. But what I did was I cut this down to size, and ideally this would be long enough that you would have a little tongue go into that groove, but I didn't have enough material in order to make these both longer than what they are, and having to recreate this molding in that groove would have been a lot more work. So what I'm going to do is, now that I went through and then I trimmed this on my table saw, I trimmed off this molding, I cut these at a 45 and these at a 45 so they match. I hand cut everything at the end because the table saw won't get you close enough. I'm going to cut the panels to size, add a new raised portion on the bottom so it all matches, and then I'm going to glue these together. I'm going to re-glue all these joints that weren't glued, and then since these aren't long enough, tomorrow once they're dry I'll put probably 2 dowels through either side, and they'll be more than sturdy enough for cabinet doors. I wouldn't recommend bypassing that groove if you're going to be making these as bigger modified panels. So the original measurements for this one were I measured in between the 2 moldings because I knew I was going to be cutting off those 2 moldings, and then like I said, I 45 these, I cut these to the mark I made for how deep these were, and then 45 these edges. And it might not look like it matches up really nicely, and that's just because the paint's chipping. It looks like there's gaps that really aren't there. I measured my diagonals and this is perfectly square, and it's the same width on bottom as top. So now that I have that, I'll cut down my panel, I'll put my tall fence in there, and I'll just cut that recess so they'll fit in there, and hopefully I could glue these up tonight. The nice thing about doing something like this, and what makes the process faster, is you can gauge all the cuts off of the materials you already have. So the angle on these, you could see by looking at it at the side, is not very severe at all. When I set it up on my fence, it's only about 2 or 3 degrees. I feel like modern day raised panels are at, especially on cabinet doors, are a much steeper degree angle. And then I was able to just use the height off of the ones I already had. So this is the one I just cut. You could see how, even though it looks a little weird because it's not painted white, how it lines up on both sides, and it should slide in that panel. I'll smooth this out and probably put a coat of white on there just to make it match.